button again. We'll make it. Me and you.
Hello. Today I'm going to use the latest edition of Dream, and this is basically the closest to what you're all going to get when you get the project. In the past, when we did those demos, the versions that we had were still iterations, and for the longest time we keep tuning and iterating. A lot of our systems now have come together. So today, even though I'm going to be focused more on making a 3D space, you will see me touch on some of the other features. So basically, without going on too much, now the menu that we have in Dream when I first start my creation looks like that. And if I use the DualShock controller or the moves, they are identical menus. In the DualShock's case, the menu is docked on the screen, and you use the gyro and the motion controls to move around, and in the move, the menu is stuck on your second controller. That but other than that, all the functionality, what they do, what happens when you press a button is identical. I will start this space by having one of our characters. He's the main character from our story, and I wanted to start this space by having a character in it because I wanted to show this time how can we create a 3D space for a character to explore, rather than something that makes a good screenshot but might not be that explorable. You might have seen in some of our other streams the concept of collections, and the simplest way of starting an environment always we say is just to start by using a pre-made asset. Here I just got a piece of grass and I can place it in the world around me. Now I'm going to make a bunch of things from scratch, but actually it's really important to show that even just collaging from one piece here, copying and pasting it around my character, flipping it around, turning it upside down, and you can get a lot of variety just from one piece. And we encourage people in Dream, when you first start, to just copy and paste and collage to get your head around the camera. Like, for example, just things like how I'm pulling myself to the world, I'm pushing the world away, I turn around the other way. Like, these are general principles that carry across all the tools when you're using the electronics, or when you're using deep sculpture, or so it's nice to get your head around them just by the copying and pasting. Just from one or two objects like that, like this is a rock and this is a piece of grass, and I haven't made them, I'm just using them. But look how quickly I can change them into something that is mine. So I just stamp this rock a few times, make it small, make it large. You can see me like how I'm changing the scale of it just by using shortcuts on my controller, rather than me going in a menu, finding the scale tool and then scaling it. That all breaks the flow. So we try as much as possible to have shortcuts for anything. Then I multi-select this cluster of rocks that I've just put in. I copy it a few times, and then you find yourself like I have made a new object from this stone. So even though I am presenting this as I am, as I said, like I'm just using collaging and copying and pasting, in fact I have already made a new asset that using those or remixing those existing ones. And you can start mixing and matching them, putting the green bit and the green grass on top of the world, and you can just make like a very, very big piece like that maybe we'll build our house on, and show some of the deeper tools. But I think it's very important to never forget that just the act of copying and pasting in Dream allows you to make the most original looking things, even without having to delve into the deeper tools. Now, I've made this little environment. In order for me to just expand it a bit, I'll just grab this bit of grass again and just copy it a few times, expand it from the other side, flip it. Again, you see like how I flipped it just with one gesture of my hand, and I've got like the beginnings of an environment. At any point in my operation, I can just quickly go into play mode. That's a very good habit to do, and then you can just walk around the space that you've made to make sure that it all works, and there is no holes in it, or there is no very high bits that our character cannot reach. That sort of thing. Like here, for example, I find a hole, so I can go back to my edit mode, and from that exact angle I can push my piece of grass and fix it. So going and jumping between the playing and creating is the first rule of making a successful environment for exploration, and not only a pretty space. Now I want to jump into deeper sculpture. So how can I make one of those props? So now we have our menu here shows you the basic functions of Dream. These tools here are like your general tools where you can move stuff around and you can scale it, you can clone them, and we will go back to them if the time allows. And these here are our different modes. We call them, so we have a modeling one, a painting one, some special effects one, the sound one, and each one of those is very powerful and full of fun and interesting toys. One of the things I really like about Dream, and we've said it many times before, is that even though I said I'm just now going to go into deep sculpture, I can't help just copying a bunch more and fixing the composition. One of the major reasons is that it's immediate. If I want to see this a little bit higher, a little bit lower, I want it a little smaller, I want a copy of it, I want to spin it, put it here, I want to make a tiny little pebble or a massive mountain in the back. It doesn't take long to try it out. You try it out and you go, no, lower, higher, turn it. That is a very, very important aspect of our philosophy in our tools. The tools allow you to spend more time using them because they are pleasant to use, and you don't have a lot of unnecessary steps. I will try, even throughout this presentation or demo, I hopefully will not spend a lot of times in front of abstract menus that you don't know exactly what you're looking at. Most of the time you will be looking at stuff that makes sense. So I now jumped into the sculpture tool. The philosophy of sculpture in Dream is very simple. It's all about shapes. You've got a bunch of shapes that you can carve into the world what you would like. So I've got a cube here, but instead I'd like to use a cylinder. And I want to make something in the same spirit of these rocks, but a more complex one. So I pick this cylinder, I pick a color, and I start stamping this shape in the world. But that's quite a sort of clean looking cylinder. while I want it to look like nice and painterly like that. So just one twist of my controller and I make my cylinder a bit more fuzzy. This fuzziness here, that we call it the looseness. Now you have a lot of different families of styles that you can use to change your looseness. The one that comes out of the box is a simple square one, but I'm going to choose a nice sort of like painterly looking one like that. And now I'll continue using my cylinders, but now rather than them being sort of like fully clean, they will be a bit fuzzy. And not only that, instead of them just appearing in the world as a cylinder, I want to blend them with the shapes beside them so they can create more interesting formations. So now you can see each form is going into the next one and creating these nice intersections between the parts. So very quickly you can start getting nice, interesting rock-like formations. And you can see this is the act of sculpting in Dream, adding and cutting shapes, whether my shapes are super clean or like this here is like an incredibly clean shape, and if I'm making a vehicle, for example, that would be the right kind of finish for a vehicle, and I can get more shiny materials and fabrics to use. So I want here to just like make a big chunky bit of mountain so I can build my house, my sort of architectural space on. And the reason I went for a bit of landscape and then followed by a bit of architecture is that allows me to go between organic sculpture. So for anyone interested in making more creatures or animals or people or stuff like that, the organic sculpture is for you. And then the architectural sculpture delves into the more precise end of Dream and how much we've added some features to support that. Now you can see like my rock formation is quite plain colored. So color in Dream is very exciting. Like rather than me, I can color this thing in a bunch of ways. I will show you some of them. The first simple way is that I can actually change the color of my cylinder as I am sculpting. So I go to my swatches and pick a color and choose the color. So in this case I will pick here we go. I will go here and pick, for example, this dark blue, and you'll see the color changing to blue, and it blends with the other colors. If I change it to yellow, you'll see is the yellow, here we go, and you see it becoming yellow. But of course that's too slow. That process of going every minute or every whatever to the menu to change a color isn't right. So we have another feature which we call the mixed brush, and that allows me basically to drag a bunch of colors inside my mixer. I'm sort of dragging some dark blue, a bit of grayish green, a bit of sort of pastel-y brown, you know, a mix of colors that say rock formation to me. And I spin that around, and you can see, and spin it slowly, and you can see the swatches changing the color live. And now my shape is changing live in front of me, and as I place each and every edit, the different color comes across and comes through. That allows me to basically get a nicer experience of coloring or shaping my form while I'm working without distraction and disturbance, allowing me to be more thinking about that shape and that mountain, and not obsessed about a menu. I think one of the saddest things about digital environments and tools is that most of the time the users are trying to tame the beast, trying to sort of like make it do what they want, while instead they should be thinking about that character or that rock or that mountain or that vehicle as much as possible. You know, the waste of time when you're spending it just adjusting parameters and things like that. So I made myself an interesting formation. You can see how these same techniques can be used to do more elaborate things. If I were to use this same add and carve methodology to do a head or a character, you can see how that can happen. Another way of coloring my objects, rather than as I am modeling, I can paint it after the fact. That concept is actually more familiar with 3D people. You just pick your airbrush color, again pick one of the shapes you want to use as your brush, and you can paint over the shape. So now I'll save this color mixer to my swatches because I might want to use it later, and that goes up here in my colors now, and forever I've got it, so if I want to use it again I can use it again and build up my library of colors. Here I'm just going to pick a bunch of greens and use that to paint over my object. So rather than sculpting, now I'm just coloring it, and I will make it a bit less opaque, so it's like quite pleasant and see-through, a bit watercolory. And now I'm just going to go over the formation and paint it. Some people prefer that. Some people prefer to sort of model monochromatically and then color after that, like a lot of people who like using or doing Warhammer, for example, and that sort of methodology. You even can go in after the fact and make, you know how I showed you how we can variate the what we call the looseness of the model. I can go in here and loosen the model up, so now I can just make it more painterly in some parts as well. So if I want to make these bits a bit painterly, so it doesn't have to all happen in the process of modeling. You know, if you want to model it all rigid, strong, clean shapes, and then you go in after the fact and you loosen it up and color it, go ahead. So this here is my bit of land that I made, and now we want to sort of duplicate it a few times to get a more interesting kind of shape, and I want now to build an architectural house on that piece of land. In fact, before that I want to show another tool as well, which is the styling tool. To make a sea, because you can't have like a cool architectural sort of space without some water. I'm having here beside me like the books of two of my big heroes, but this one mainly is the man Frank Lloyd Wright, of course, greatest architect, and I think there has been more advances in architecture since Frank Lloyd Wright, but never a sort of command on the medium. The transition from classic to modern that he has showed us is something else. So I'm getting a cube here, literally just a cube, and I want to make a sea out of just this cube, and I use the same color mixer to give me some variety. So just make a bunch of cubes beside each other, and we turn that thing into a sea by just placing it here I can extend it. We have functionalities, by the way, in sculpture that allow you to modify your forms after the fact as well. Kind of like extruding, or anyone who has used software like SketchUp would have seen stuff like that. So I've made a stripped bit of land. Now that doesn't really look like the sea, so I need to loosen it up. I go to another tool which is called the Style tool, which allows me to loosen it after the fact. I change the style from the squarey one to, let's say, this Monet one, and sort of paint over that different style. Cool. And now that it is put together, I want to give it some animation. So I go to another bunch of tools, which we call inside the tool bag here, and we call it the effects tool. And literally I go to this tab one called the flow tool, and if I hold my tool over the water, it just makes it transform into a sea. If it's too fast, I can slow it down by just doing the reverse. Too slow, too fast. So see, again, here's an example of like our UI philosophy. Just changing the speed of the thing is a pleasant operation. In fact, if I want to change the direction of it, I don't go to some weird concept of I just go to another tool called the comb, and I comb it in another direction, and then it goes in the other direction. I want it to go this way, I want it to go that way. So again, as tactile as we could possibly think of, in order to allow the users to enjoy themselves. If you have a river that goes and goes around and goes up and down like a waterfall or something, you can have that experience not over technical. So I put this C. I want to slow it down because it's a bit too much. So let's go back here. I go back to the slow it down. Yeah, cool. The other thing that I can do to this C to give it a more C-like look is go back to the effects tool and give it a waviness. So again, I just use the wave tool, and that makes the water go a little bit in a wave-like manner. Cool. So now we've got the sea, we've got the bit of land, we've got our guy. Let's build a architectural formation. So I go back to my sculpture tools. Again, the same bunch of shapes, but now I'm going to turn the grid on and change the materials maybe to something more industrial, this shiny material, and I will make a bunch of modules that I will use to make my building. You can see my grid, or my shape now is looking to the grid. So if I build this shape here, if I make stamp my cubes, they go cleanly on the grid. I can start extruding. I can do things like that, where I, rather than stamping shapes, I crushed my shape and I extrude out some walls. These are some of the tools that we have done for the architectural or for the more precise user sort of thing. We make this thing grow more and more bits. The nice thing is that I can still cut and add and do a lot of the same operations that we were doing for the rock. I can also make a hole in my shape and get a more interesting cube. It's like a cube now with a hole, and if I use that, I can make a module out of that. What about if I put it on the side here, for example, as a detail on that module? Put it on the other side again. I can carve a hole into this shape using another one of our shapes. Let's take a cylinder, for example, and make a carved hole inside there. I want it exactly where I want. And the nice thing I want to show you, you can really zoom in and get quite exact about where you want your choices to go. So I made this module here. For symmetry, I'll go and do the hole on the other side as well, sort of thing. So I've got this bit. Now what can I do with that? How can we turn that into something else? So I can now just see what's the potential of this thing. I can first use it to get my guy up there. So I've made a small reuse, exactly the same philosophy of my rocks. I start using this shape and see what we can do with that. So I'm first gonna use it as a path. Come in, make it quite smaller height. And then make a cool entrance by turning it around, using that to block. The nice thing about architecture is repetition. So whenever you repeat something, it starts becoming more intentional. I think myself and Anton once made a one of the streams before, showing the power of the modules and how you can just make one piece and use that as an item that you can then expand on and turn into a whole city. So I'm sort of building my formations here and getting to discover their potential. You can sort of take something. In fact, I'll do that and then flip this one, make an interesting entrance, turn them around like that. I'm starting to see something shaping up. The next thing I want to try is another module so it can have some variety. So I'll go in here and make something. I saw in one of my books a cool stone-like technique that I will show you here. So I'll go back to my colors, save that, and make a rock or a brick color scheme. A rock color scheme. Just here and there, and then make a long thin thing, and start putting my rock on it. And because the tumbler or the color mixer is picking different parts, each time I will get a different sort of shade. That's quite subtle, but it gives enough variety as well. I'll give it even more one accenty, stronger color, so we can get some difference. And I'm sort of doing it in a sketch-like way. I don't want to make it too clean. Variate the looseness. So you can do your own textures and your own very varied materials by painting them up like that. And then just I'm gonna clean the facade so it's like all one plane. And we can mix that, make it shorter. And now I've got like this sort of brick-like structure that we can mix in with the other one. to make that more intentional. Sort of you start working it with the other piece. And as soon as you have two different materials, you start getting the rhythm of the design starting to sort of appear. You can work with that and see what design is going to appear. I think sometimes in architecture it's very essential to have varied surfaces to play with. In fact, I can even mix in a lighting module so we can have another strong ingredient in architectural construction. But you can see already how a few very simple shapes have turned into a more ambitious or a more intentional looking thing. We can keep going with that sort of design. I want to show you as well the bit that I was talking about with integrating a light. So again, like all our we have multiple lights in Dream, or multiple ways of doing lights in Dream. The simplest one is you sculpt any object at all, even the simplest of objects, like a cube here. I'll just do, I don't want it in brown, so I'll do it in sort of an orangey color, like that. And then I could just literally do a simple shape like that to make it more interesting. Carve something, make a hole in it, sort of like that. It's the simplest of shapes. And then I will go in my coating tool and I can just make that glow. And now this has turned into a light. This light I can integrate in my design as well. So now my design is starting to get quite complex because it's got lights in it, it's got multiple materials and surfaces, and we're ready to play with it. I want to sort of put this light behind this shape because it kind of looks like a window. And if we repeat it enough times, it will work more. In fact, let's integrate this rock thing with that piece as well. You can make it like detail up here, and you can flip it. The nice variate the module size a bit so you can get some variety, and then again rationalize it with something like that. By the way, one of the things we're intending on doing is doing much slower videos. We're calling the master classes or the tutorial classes, and those will be much slower paced, going in the tools, showing what does what. Today I didn't do that, or I didn't choose to go in that pace. Instead, I wanted actually to make the Twitch about design or designing spaces rather than how to or what tool does what, because there will be other videos and other streams that are more tuned to that direction. Look, now for example, I found the circle bit again, and let's duplicate it and do a module. The duplication tool, by the way, is like crazy because you can make stuff out of you can make like very organic and weird things like tentacles and stuff like that just by, for example, if I use this piece of grass and I clone it multiple times and then recursively change the scale of it, you can like really get like some Inception type coolness. But The more formal usage of cloning is like what I'm doing here. Actually, I'll switch the grid back on. Tilt on 45. And we're the entrance of our fortress or our architectural space is shaping up. Take another one, take these two, flip it, put it on the other side. And now, okay, we'll take all that piece and make it into a new piece. So see, the same way that I was doing to the rocks in the beginning by taking a rock and composing out of it, and then this plus presents itself. As soon as I multiple selected stuff on my menu, I have a plus saying, do you want to group it? Yes, I want to group it, and now that's a group. So I can also go to that group, and another feature presented itself, like, do you want to save this as a new creation? If I go like, yeah, I want to, name it, publish it, and everybody in the community will just get that bit. So as you're working, you can always pick bits that were successful from your creation and publish them. You don't have to do the whole thing. But I'm now sort of, I copied and pasted this sort of like crazy thing, and now it's starting to turn into, you know, like some crazy alien. Actually, I want to see it on this side. Yeah, that's better. It looked a bit much. It needs as well a scale upgrade. Yeah, it's better. More convincing. Yeah, like this central hot bit is now turning into something. You know, you always look in a design for an area to galvanize around. You want to sort of, as soon as you find success, okay, I feel this is an entrance of some sort, and now we can respond to that, see if that's a good one. So this building is shaping up now into an architectural superstructure. That now is my building, and if I want to go back to get the land to come back and sort of respond, the C, now we need to move it. Cool. So now that we have a bit of environment, I sort of that appeared, put the bit, sort of copy a bit of the landscape again to sort of set this building on top of the land. In fact, now I want to build something that makes it sit a bit better. So I'll just take this first base thing, just expand the base a bit more. Because it's sort of a bit odd that the building just goes directly on the rock. Needs a bit of breathing. So as you can see, like, the act of designing in Dream is quite accentuate or what am I trying to say? I want to say it sort of makes you think while you're working way more than other tools. I claim because the tool is so immediate that it makes my actual problems more about what's that building going to be, where is that place, you know, what's happening there, who lives there. It doesn't feel right, you know, like when a writer is writing a song, something, they put a sentence and it doesn't feel right, and scribble and throw the notes and start again, because it's not right. It doesn't feel right. Like design and art and storytelling and animation and all these things, they cannot be at the mercy of technology and what can be done and deadlines and that madness. It's only timeless, and it only survives time when it is not only a testament to the technology. Yeah, Dream is all full of technology, but our guys have done like astonishing work in terms of like lighting and rendering, but the user interface that puts all these technologies in people's hands and allows every single little cut. Like if I go back to this little floor here and I just want to do a tiny little indentation here like that, or I want a little, that's all like exactly my marks, and that is mine. This is not the technology, this is my choice. The technology is obviously beautiful and it's allowing me to do that, but I think that is what makes people's styles really come through. If someone else is doing this demo, the building and the choices and everything will really conform to their own aesthetic abilities and choices, and rather than one size fits all mentality. It's not, that's cool. See, I found, we're almost done now, which is a good point because I think covered most of the things. I wanted to do a cool tree, but next time maybe. Shall we do a cool tree?
Do a cool tree.
Yeah, it's got trees are like almost as cool as humans because they're cooler than humans. They make the oxygen.
Everybody on the stream wants a cool tree too,
okay,
so we got it.
Let's do it. It's also, you know, a bit something for nature. I just expand. I like Dream makes you want to always resolve your spaces nicely and not just leave it in an annoying place. Like I'll just put this one extra bit. It's always a good sign. Like it's always a good sign that you don't want to go home and you just want to keep using it. The tree. So, where was I? Yeah. A nice way of doing tree actually is using the upright tool. We have a tool called upright here, and just for the first bunch of edits I like to use the upright tool. So I'm just gonna sort of, not brown, a bit lighter. There you go. It's a bunch of different browns here. This mixed brush feature is amazing. I love it. And then I do a sort of long and thin cylinder, make it tighter. Yeah, so literally a cylinder, right? And I've got the upright, so it's definitely facing upwards. And then I'll just make one cylinder exact. And then I go to a stretch tool that we have and make it a bit longer. Go up, you go. And now that I've done that, I make it a bit. That's a technique anyway. A lot of people have their tree secrets, but I like doing mine like that. So basically, I now will carve some using the soft blend. I will make it imperfect so it's not like a lamp post. But it has that general upness, which is essential, I think. Like that's very upsetting when you do a tree that just doesn't feel like it's going up. So I made the cylinder and then I just cut out some bits, and now it sort of acts as a simple base. And now I want to do an awesome branch. So a technique to do a branch, which I like, is I'll turn off the upright now. We don't need it anymore. Thank you. And I do a sort of egg-shaped thing, and we have another tool which allows me to spin my forms like that. That creates very cool looking results. If I move my hand while the thing is spinning, it does these kind of interesting shell-like shapes. If I move it very slowly, it does a cool branch. And I think that you know, like in nature you see like branches like always doing like really nice looking things like that. So that's a nice technique. And then, because we don't have much time, I will have to sort of just copy it and paste it a bunch of times, and we see what we can get out of that sort of thing. In fact, I will do another one as well, just to get some variety. And we can always go after the fact as well and move stuff around, so you know, anyone who wants to be super meticulous can be. So I just did like a bunch of branches like that, clustered them together, make that into a new object, and now we can just branch it out. To make it varied as well, I can go in and just delete, oh no, go in, delete one from here, and then go and delete a different one from there, you know, not this one, go in, not the full thing. Because each one of those groups, you know, you want them to be slightly different from one another. Something. So you can do that. And you know, got ourselves a base of a tree, and now to show off but it's mega huge, so we need to rescale it. I'll just select all its bits, right, make that into one thing, and then I want to turn my upright again, smaller. Where's the dude? Yeah, here he is. So always a good sort of like mental thing just to compare to the guy so we don't go crazy, right? And then let's put some awesome painterliness. So we go back to our painterly tool. I pick the stamp brush. The stamp brush allows you to just stamp in space the different styles, but rather than just stamping them, I will make a cloud out of it. So we have a sort of scatter operation that if I twist my hand, it just makes a scatter bomb of that sort of tree, that brush type. So I'll just pick, I think like some warm orangey sort of ness and a little olive. There we go, and that's nice. And sort of, so you see like it takes from that color, and now I can just put this cloud cluster of tree goodness around the branches. This feature of painting with the splats in space is just like loaded, like there is like a whole universe of techniques and brushes and stuff that you can do out of it, but we'll just show today the cloud brush or the stamp one, which is tip of the iceberg, but it's very cute. So again, we did our tree here. If we like the tree and it looks cool, then I can again stamp that into publish that on its own and say, okay, I've got a cool tree out of this demo. I'll make it a bit smaller, and I've got the upright one. So now a bunch of them. Ooh, upside down. No, that's kind of good for another time. We do a surreal thing, but I don't want that now. Here. Just always really nice to have them in an environment. And a great note actually to some here. I will do separate videos on the cameras and how to move around space and just like stuff like that a bit short on its own. Like it needs its time just to talk about all the nuances. You've seen me like zoom in and out and stuff like that, and there is some secret sauce there, so we will talk about it in depth, but today is just an overview. The lovely thing about this now, just to get some of the tree on the other side, Bosch, here we go. The nice thing is now to introduce some variety to these trees. We can go to my coat tool and pick my tint brush and sort of go, I take a dark color and just go, I think these ones need to be a little bit darker, you know, and this one here and that one there. So you can always achieve variety after the fact in a multitude of ways. I can restyle. I go to this tree and go, I want to actually restyle it. So I will go to my style tool. I don't like this splatty brush. I want to do it out of this dotty one. So I will just change it into the dotty one. Then this one too. No, I don't like that. Scribbly. Yeah, I like that. So you know, all the tools in Dream have that immediacy, and that maestro-ness allows you to just always have the courage to try things out.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Kareem.
Thank you.
That was super cool.
Ah,
Then we almost killed
okay.
Kareem.
Yeah.
So the question, one of the questions that we always get is about sort of thermometer, how many objects you can put in a level, that kind of stuff. So if you could elaborate a little bit, I know it's something that always comes up when we do these.
See, we have a great bunch of us working on the thermometer features that allows you in every level to see. You see these things on the side, those sliders, that's telling you like that is your model quota. And if you fill it up, it tells you advice, try reducing your models. Or if you're really expensive in using the logic, it will tell you actually you've went overboard in logic, try to chill it out. So there is a lot of diagnostic ooh, check this out. This is like the this is like the Matrix. We love this feature, by the way. This one allows you to explode your scene into a list view that allows you to see it and work on it in a more object by object way, and it's very useful for electronics. But on thermometer, we have diagnostic tools, tell you where your problem is, give you some advice, and different areas where you can optimize. It's very hard to have a silver bullet there, because someone might put all their effort in this, a piece of music and use all the stamina of the device to make a whole sort of like a Fantasia type experience, musical, visual thing. Someone else will put all their energy into the handling of an amazing combat character and so on. So we try as much as possible to give the information that allows every user to optimize their spaces.
I know the answer to the next question, but it's cool to show. Can you make it night?
Yeah. This is cool. I'm very happy. Shame. So yeah, this is a very nice one actually, because we have Alex and Simon, the great Simon and great Mark Adami. We have like such an amazing engine department. This project would not have been possible. So the reason I picked them up now is this environment gadget here and the great gadget. These two babies here. This one first, little thing, allows you to do all sorts of things to the environment. First you get this cool gizmo, which is like got a glowing bit on top of it, and that's basically the sun. So you can move the sun around. get it in front of the shape, put it behind for like more drama. And instead of trying to search where is the sun in the scene, you can just move this little gizmo around. You also can make it dark by making the sun brightness very low, so we sort of like make no sun at all, or we can keep the sun brightness and do like movie style darkness. So a lot of movies actually their night is very bright, it's just fake, so you can still see everything but it has the ambience of the night. So you have either you switch off the sun entirely or you just darken. And if I darken the scene like that and I want to bring in some artificial lights, we have but before I do that, actually just to show more of the environment, so that shows you how to do the nighttime, but we can actually also change the styles of the sky. See, the sky here has the same painterly effects that we have everywhere. I can change it to a different color, completely get like, you know, purple, just one for Prince, and we get like a bit of a purple sky. It's too saturated, so we sort of reduce the saturation. So a lot of toys to play with your environment and mood to change the atmosphere. So that's one of them. And the other one to expand on like how to make a space dark, you can use movie type effects, which is this other toy, and there's so many other features in them, but that's just an overview. And here it's like your good old sort of brightness and contrast and stuff that people are now so used to them on their phones and stuff. But we can do this one here to get like your proper Instagram style. So for example, I can go in the shadows and give them greens in the shadows to give it a bit of sort of David Lynchness. And then we go and in the midtones and fill them with blues, and then in the highlights sort of make them very warm.
I like that.
So it just like changes the grade of the environment. You can add vignettes and make it like vignette from the side and bloom and all sorts of things. So those two toys here allow you to change completely the mood of your space that you did after the fact.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, because we had a bunch of questions like asking like how you add like something like rain, which is maybe a good one to show too. And then I think we're probably out of time, so we can let everybody go home for the weekend. But you also, just to remind everybody, you can send us your questions. We won't be able to get to everything right now. We still have lots of time to talk about dreams, and we're going to be doing streams in pretty much every month. Now, and we're going to be doing logic and animation coming up, which is really exciting to a lot of people. We got a ton of questions about it. So a lot of the questions that we can't answer currently, we'll be getting to in the upcoming months, and we've been logging all of them, so we know what you've been asking, and we'll show you how to make rain now.
Cool. So how do
I love doing this. It's so fun.
Yeah. So you do sort of like I'm gonna make it. I'll keep it moody actually. So I just do a pass. I draw a little pass like that. It's more like snow. It's raining directly. And then, so I just did one straight line, and then I basically just animate that. So you go to the animation features and you duplicate it. So now I've duplicated this line, and I can increase the copies, make even more of them. So now this line, I've got more of them, but how can we animate that? So we turn that into what we call I need to turn the time on, and then we can start making that scroll. So now this whole line is scrolling, but I want to make it have a shorter tail. So we have one which is like the tail. Make it faster as well. So here I'm sort of modifying the speed of it, make it come down faster and faster and faster. Then pulse, yeah. So the pulse basically makes that thing not draw completely, just draws a little bit of it and goes along the line. So I'm basically using a combination of these guys. It's too slow, this range. It needs to go faster and faster.
So cool.
Faster. And then you can go back to the page of the copies and sort of go like, actually we need more copies. So give it, it's still super chilled, so you speed it up. And that's the experience of...
It's got like the rain streaking across the window vibe. Yeah, and that can be used for all sorts of weather effects. It's one of my favorite things to play around with in Dreams.
You think the Thornbeak's around here?
The old fears, they still haunt me.
Hold on, Lance! We're coming! Is she here? I found you!
That need to make something again. We'll make it.